Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is Monday, July 13th, and we are back at the Arcan meeting room. So with our traditions, we will do the pledge tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. For those of you watching on ADMI or perhaps joining us through Zoom, this meeting is being held in accordance with the governor's rules. We have no more than 10 people in the Arcan meeting room, socially distanced by the petitions that you see, and we have guests who are joined. I'm sorry, Jim?
If you don't mind, could you speak up just a little bit? We have the one mic.
Yeah. There you go. All right. So I've been asked to speak up. So I've never had that happen in my life that I was asked to speak louder, but that is okay. Kicking off tonight's agenda, are we going to go with the fiscal 20 transfers right now, Dennis?
Sure. And Mary is with us if there are any questions.
Mary, would you like to add anything to the conversation?
Nope, I'm just asking for your support of this final set of FY20 end of year fiscal transfers in the amount of $40,753. You all should have the schedule presented in front of you, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
They all seem straightforward for people who may be watching on TV. These are transfers. Some examples run for the adjustments for our debt structure, transferring money from interest to principal and vice versa. Some adjustments to salaries that are contractual, gas, heating, and fuel, electricity, fairly standard for a July meeting. May I entertain a motion to approve the transfer of $40,753 as requested by our CFO.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
I think we got Cindy on your second there. So Dawn and Cindy, for the record, Hillary?
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, all those in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
None. See what happens when you have Zoom meetings for 4
I know.
months? Okay, next up, we had some appointments by the town administrator that weren't included in our previous rules. Dennis, would you like to go through those?
Yes. Mike McEwen, Assistant Inspector of Plumbing and Gas. And then the other two really are yours, but you can lump them all together. Patrick Cassini, Memorial and Veterans Day Committee, and Paul Tebow, Memorial and Veterans Day Committee.
Okay, and they're all the ones appointed by the selectmen are
Town residents.
town
Yes.
residents,
Yes.
which is usually something I inquire about.
Patrick's the director over at BMW.
Yes.
Amanda.
Yep.
Okay. May I have a motion to accept the town administrator's appointment of Mike McEwen and the board of selectmen's appointments of both Patrick Cassini and Paul Tebow?
So moved.
Second.
First by Mr. Spencer, second by Ms. Grant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. For those watching on TV, throughout the course of the last couple of years, we have gone into executive session. For the last month, members of the Board of Selectmen have been asked to review those executive session minutes. We currently have a list of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 sessions that are for approve and release, and 2 sessions due to the ongoing nature of those executive sessions that are approved and not released. Each member of the Board of Selectmen has reviewed them, signed off in the book that they have done so. Entertain a motion for the review and release as noted of executive session minutes for the last 2 years.
So moved.
So moved.
She's on delay.
She's on delay. We'll take it first by Mr. Martinez and the second by Cindy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. 5-0. All right, moving right along.
I think we should all delay our votes.
We'll let Cindy do the first one next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Sorry, Cindy.
I can't hear. It's hard to hear you guys. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, we'll talk louder.
I
Either
can
that or
hear
you
you,
can
Michael,
come-
fine. I can't hear anybody else.
We have from our executive administrative assistant, approval of the June 8th, June 15th, June 19th, and July 6th minutes. Entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Cindy?
So moved.
Thank you very much. First by Ms. McNulty, second by Mr. Spencer. All
Oh,
those
boy.
in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. May abatements, which generally run to our newest member of the Board of Select, the Select Board. I will get that straight.
However, because it seemed like it's home hazing, I'm gonna take the first one.
Hey, wow, you're missing off easy.
If they could-
Wait, what am I missing? What's happening?
Oh, yeah, no
If they can
chance.
change the name of the Washington football team, we should change the way we do it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the following abatements. Capital improvement charge in the amount of $270. Sewer in the amount of $79.55. Trash in the amount of $248.39. Water in the amount of $875.46 for a grand total of $1,473.40.
I have a second. Second by Ms. Grant. All those in favor, say aye.
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 None. All right, next up, we have our town administrator's report, which fortunately he is sitting close to the microphone, so everyone will hear what he has.
You'll be able to hear it. We had some great news the end of last week relative to our small business loan grant application. If you recall, it's managed through the community, or it's a community development block grant managed through Department of Housing and Community Development, federal money. It's more CARES Act money. And if you recall the Zoom meeting we had a couple of months ago with Paula Stewart from Community Opportunity Group and Peter Sanborn, they talked about the process. It's a regional grant. Jim actually did a lot of survey work, which was very helpful in submitting the application, because we were able to demonstrate that we do have a lot of small businesses that are 5 employees and under, that would qualify or be eligible for the grant. And DHCD wanted to make sure that the grants were issued to communities that were truly going to be able to utilize that money and get that money out, because there's nothing worse than they're dishing out a grant and then the community not using it. So there are, I think, 7 communities involved in the grant. We are the lead community. And Jim, maybe you could touch a little bit on the grant itself.
Yeah, sure. So it's it has 2 parts to it. The first deals with food pantries and assisting communities with those needs. The second is for micro enterprises. So those are for businesses of 5 or less employees, but it also has an income qualifier. So that will be the thing that we'll need to vet out and confirm that our businesses, or which one of our businesses will be qualified for those. But we did some preliminary reviews, as Dennis mentioned, and we have a large number of micro enterprises in town. You wouldn't think of it, but once we started vetting through our certificates and talking with businesses, there's actually quite a few in town. So I think this will be a well-received grant and a well-used grant in Bellingham, at least. And I know all the other communities that joined on board are very excited about it. I've had a number of them reach out already to discuss next steps.
The best part about this grant is that they're administrative funds. So community opportunity groups will actually manage it, because there's a lot of paperwork involved. And I know that Jim is especially pleased that COG will be managing for us, much like they do our community development block grant. So the housing rehabilitation program, and they have offices right next door, and they'll be reaching out to the other communities and to the business communities here. So good news there. I've got a second host community agreement for Frozen 4. If you recall, Frozen 4 is the cultivation facility up on Williams Way. We entered into a host community agreement with them after cultivation was allowed by town meeting vote. It pays about $1 million, not about, but $1 million over 5 years for the cultivation. That's what the town will receive in payments for that agreement that the board signed, I think about 1.5 years ago. They're requesting a second host community agreement, which would allow them to provide delivery services. They're talking 6 or fewer vans. We're saying 10 vans would be housed up on Williams Way. When their project was cited, those numbers are within what the planning board approved for the location that they're in right now. They would not be able to deliver in Bellingham because we are a no dispensary community. So there'll be no deliveries in Bellingham, but they'll be able to deliver elsewhere. For the benefit of our serving as their delivery site, the town of Bellingham, the agreement calls for an additional $1 million over 5 years. So I don't know why we wouldn't do it. There's zero impacts relative to it. They won't be providing delivery services in Bellingham, be no more than the cultivation, which is ongoing. We get a mouse in our Zoom meeting.
I think it's the bird. I think it's the birds that Cindy's hanging out with.
Jim, I don't know.
Sorry, I'll mute.
Jim, I don't know if you have anything to add relative to that.
No, it's just as Dennis mentioned with the original siting of the building, actually stepping back to before Frozen 4 actually came, there was another tenant that was going to take over the building, and actually it was significantly more employees, significantly more van traffic. So that was scaled back already with Frozen 4. So these numbers are well within the contemplated traffic impacts and any kind of impacts that William Way or Mendon Street would see during the planning board process.
So it would require board's approval in order to enter into this agreement. It has been reviewed by town council. It's actually pretty similar, almost identical to the agreement that we entered into for cultivation. If you have any questions.
Just, so I know it's kind of been, it's been a little bit longer than we anticipated for the cultivation aspect they're going. If, I don't know if there's a reason or not, if they're looking, you know, if there's a potential that they may not do it, they may sell their license, if you will. Will the community agreements, host community agreements be transferable?
They could be transferable and it's subject to our approval. So, and actually it was transferred from, there was another company there, I forget the name of it, I forget what the name of it was, but they actually transferred it to yeah, no, it wasn't Good Chemistry. They're up and running.
Dairy Farm.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Dairy Farms. I recall, they were the first one. So, but all indications are, I know there's been some issues with them getting their building finalized, but they are, you know, they are going through the CCC process. They do have their approval subject to our approval from the Cannabis Control Commission for the delivery service. So again, I don't know why we wouldn't do it in that there's no impacts, right?
That's
This is the location that originally started at like 8,000 or 10,000 square feet and then got approved to go up to 50.
No, so this is the site is right next to that 10,000 square foot. This is 50,000 square foot or 60,000. I can't recall off the top of my head, but it's the larger building directly behind it.
And it is, the structure is up. It just hasn't been outfitted yet with the equipment. Their plan is to be operational in January is what they're saying.
When would the payments begin for the town building?
The payments begin, I believe it's 90, it's in the agreement, but I believe it's 90 days after they start the product. The cultivation, I think, is 90 days following, and this is actually, I think, and even quicker. The first payment's even quicker, and they are biannual. And that's in addition to taxes, personal property taxes, and so it's on top of everything else that they would be providing.
actually 5 days after they.
Yeah, the cultivation then is 6 months. So, and this is 5 days after they begin the delivery service.
Very good.
Yeah.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the host community agreement with Frozen 4 with regards to the delivery license.
Second.
First by Mr. Spencer, second by Mr. Martinez. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. 5-0. Excellent.
Yeah, just a couple of updates. I know the board's very much aware of it, but for the public's sake, notice town offices have been open for some time now. The library is gearing up. You visit the library's website, you'll see what's going on there, but they're doing some curbside service and they're also gearing up for some modified opening, I believe the first week in August. Senior Center, I know Jim was up with Esther, our public health nurse, today, up to the Senior Center, meeting with the director, Josie, and trying to figure out what they can do up there. It's obviously a much more vulnerable population. They do a lot of activities. Right now, we're limited to 8 per 1,000 square feet. That's why we've got to spread out so much here. This is like a 16,000 square foot room, which would allow us to have about, I think, a capacity of 14 in here, going by the 8 by 1,000 square feet. So Senior Center has to go by those same rules. They are putting up a tent tomorrow, actually, so they'll be able to have some covered events outside. The regulations are a little bit more liberal for outside activities, so they'll be able to do some things there. They've got a new gas grill hooked up. I feel like I gotta yell, everybody so far away. They've got a new gas grill hooked up outside, and they'll be having some events. So hopefully we'll start to, they've been doing a lot of outreach up there. Employees have been there. They've started up transportation for essential transportation. So we're doing as much as we can and still meet the requirements of the phase that we're in, and obviously keep everybody's safety and health in mind at all times. And the Senior Center is obviously one area that we want to keep a close eye on. So that started up. We're still doing our Tuesday morning meetings. We'll be doing one tomorrow at 9 a.m. for all the department heads and town officials. So that continues to go on. I do have an executive session. I know we talked about 2. I'll explain why we will only be looking at having 1, and that would be for I want to have an executive session to discuss a proposed agreement with Gracewood Development relative to an agreement that the town actually entered into in 2013, and some changes that they'd like to make to that agreement. So I'll be asking for an executive session for that matter at the conclusion of this meeting. And I know you were going to bring up the household hazardous waste day, Mr. Chairman, so I won't speak to that. That's all that I had.
Just for clarity, we are attempting to have our Board of Selectmen Town Administrator cookout in August if we are allowed. That's correct.
Yeah, we may have some difficulty doing that in August. Maybe push back, actually.
Yeah.
Hillary and I were
talked to
talking about that
Josie,
today.
And she thought maybe it wouldn't be enough space at the senior center, and then suggested doing like what they had done at the high school, but Dennis and I talked about it. Thinking we should
Do it later in the year.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
So that being said, though, we need to determine when we want to meet in August. Okay.
Does anyone else have anything under old business? Anything under new business? Yes. Yeah.
I do. Can we open the fall town meeting warrant? I did put it on the agenda and set a closing date for August 21st.
Just that spring town meeting.
I know, isn't it weird?
What would the dates be again?
We're gonna open the warrant tonight.
Yep.
And close it on August 21st. We can get a motion for that.
So
Second.
Mr. Martinez and Ms. Grant to fall town meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 9-5-0. Very good. Okay. Do anything?
Nope.
All right. In other notes, I happened to see on social media that our town administrator was getting some nice props because apparently it was our most successful hazardous waste day, more than 300 participants.
That's why I reminded you to bring that up. Yeah.
So my dad is one of the people from Clean Harbors who run it every year here in town, coincidentally. So there was a little hiccup at about 7 o'clock in the morning. I got a frantic call because the company who drops the trailer that everything goes into
Dumpster, yeah.
to put the dumpster in the wrong spot because they didn't realize, I should have said something, that because of the YMCA food distribution that goes on Fridays, they couldn't drop the trailer where it needed to be. So it was a little, they had to get someone out to come and move the trailer. So I checked back in at 1, they still had people coming through. And Clean Harbors was working with half the staff that they normally have. Bellingham's is one of their largest household waste collection days that they do during the summer. So to have half their staff, I got some good feedback on social media that everyone was very happy with how it was run. The Clean Harbors people thanked the Parks Department gentlemen that were there all day, helping them. They didn't leave till after 4 o'clock, so it was very busy, but I think my dad's, there was like 320 something at the final.
361.
Yeah, that's what he got. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it's such an amazing service that people utilize that the town does. It's great.
I'll add that I went twice in the morning. And I looked at the line and I kept going because I had to get somewhere early in the afternoon to my son. And it's like, I'll never get there if I stay in this line. And then I went back again and the line was past the high school. I'm like, nah, I'll just have to wait till the next one.
I usually tell people get there around 12 o'clock because it's 9 to 1 and it dies down, but it never died down. I usually go for the first half hour, 45 minutes, get a little FaceTime and leave.
Yeah.
But I was there for the entire 4 hours. And one of the things I was saying earlier was the fact that the number one comment was how much people appreciated those 10 o'clock morning meetings we were doing.
Yeah.
A lot of positive feedback. I know we joked about the 10 or 12 people that are watching, but a lot of people were watching. And young, old, a lot of good comments with regard to that. So it was good to hear.
Yeah, one thing I would add, I think social media mentioned that there was some people said they did not know about it, which you clarified for me today, that everyone who has a residential landline automatically gets the message. Cell phones, you have to sign up. And maybe there's an opportunity, knowing that if we're sending out trash and water bills, we can put in the mail entry when we know the date in those so that they get it. Because the last thing we want to do is have people saying they weren't informed when we jump through hoops to notify people. In case in point, having 361 drop-offs is indicative of the fact that the word is getting out as much as possible.
Yeah, people should sign up. There's a code red icon on the town's homepage, and you can sign up as many cell numbers as you want. And also town news notifications. A lot of people don't realize all the bulletins that we post, you can get those notifications right to your email address if you're signed up for those. And a lot of people look at you like they don't know what you're talking about, because we work with it every day, getting the word out to people that aren't aware of it. It makes a big difference when you're getting those notifications. We're still putting out the Board of Health's daily notification on how we're doing as far as COVID goes. And I know a lot of people appreciate getting those because they're able to keep track on what's happening here in Bellingham.
Next up, just as a point of reference, if people aren't aware, Spider, who was our police dog, passed away on July 6th, and the police department posted a social media notification that officers Lenny and Jen Goslin were the caretakers for the dog, and the dog was taken out of service in March to the Bellingham Police Department and the community. And just to like to recognize the fact that Spider was originally a police dog in Boston, came to Bellingham, and Jen and Lenny Goslin have done wonders having that dog around. I know I see the dog all the time at school, so just to make note of that, that's an unfortunate loss. We have invited members Bruce and Rob, Board of Health, to join us tonight, just to update the board on a recent event. More informational, and that we're following the situation as it goes. So I spoke to Bruce over the weekend, and I know Rob was visiting. So we'll keep it short and not overly detailed, but just where we're going, and that the business is working with the town on the situation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to mention that Rob Griffin, our food inspector, does an awesome job. I mean, when we go in there and we find trouble, and I think a lot of the places during COVID forgot how to do business or something, because when we're in there, the processes of keeping food at the proper temp and storage have slipped, and I think maybe some of them are lacking a proper number of staff in order to deal with it's not coming back, because a lot of people haven't come back on their jobs or whatever. But anyways, Friday, Robert went into the restaurant, and that they are continuing problems with their food temp and storage, and some items not being properly in the proper location. And then they had a gas power operated power washer right next to the bean bin and next to the hot water. Get a number of different things there. I think if my employer is there, he'd be shaking his boots with the gas right next to the electric hot water there. In addition to that, restaurant was slammed, it was just packed. Almost every seat of the restaurant was full. So we had to go over and brief them on, proper techniques. Rob has gone through with his program, we got a new program that offers suggestions and stuff on, how to deal with things to try to get within the performance. The temperature, setting a timer, and they actually went out and bought a temp gun like the ones we use. So, if something's looking like it's out of temp, they can make adjustments to it rather than the food going bad. I sat with them for a number of hours. We actually moved tables out and chairs out so that we got that safe social distancing. I'm going to recommend that, we try to visit all of the restaurants now and make sure that everybody's got that safe social distancing down, because everybody seems to have their own little opinion on what's safe and not. And people go in and get complaints or whatever, when it's actually good. And
Bruce, we gotta have you speak up. I can see the people on Zoom in the background that can't
They
hear
can't
you
hear.
well enough. So why don't you talk to the microphone? and set
Yeah,
it up?
I'll turn it.
There you go. Get a profile.
Shoot it out this way. But we're probably take visits to each of the restaurants, make sure that, everybody's got that proper social distancing. Maybe it'll help with some of the phone calls that come in. A lot of people go in and they're not really familiar with what 6 feet is or what's safe. And, we get the call that, people aren't wearing a mask. Well, you can't wear a mask when you're eating. You can wear the mask when you come in the door and you're being greeted and seated. But I know I always.
Yeah, no, you can look at Dennis.
It's tough. But anyway, I think, if we can have Robert jump on our COVID team for inspections and stuff, because he's out doing the inspections all the time. He's like my front man, and reports back to me that, that if we brief him a little bit on the safe social distancing, we may end up, I know Jim and myself and Tim are like straight out busy. So, get him when he's out there doing that to take a visit and take a peek and say, offer suggestions to the different restaurants and make that work. Because it was tough to get around to all of them. All of a sudden everybody's open, and we can't get it all covered all at once. But Rob's done a great job on getting at least the food part of it, and getting out there, and the ones that are having great difficulty, he's spending a lot of time explaining to them how to make things work. If it's a special type of cover or using a timer or whatever. But I mean, we've probably worked with 4 or 5 restaurants very closely to get them back into conformance.
Well, I'd like to thank you. I know your job isn't from 8 to 4 all the time. You and I spoke at 9:30 at night.
Right.
And that's the time of day where you need to be out there, is when the restaurants are open. So I'd like to thank you and Rob for your diligence and for what you've done for the community.
And I don't know if Rob has anything to chime in, but I mean, we did spend considerable time. We also met with Police Officer Lenny Gosselin out there as well on one of the other issues that's going on out there. Offered some suggestions and stuff on how to try to deal with that as well.
Rob, would you like to add anything?
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I have been in communication with the restaurant in question quite a bit. I do have 2 of the manager's phone numbers, so we've been going back and forth just trying to get things into compliance and working on different issues. As of actually just a few minutes ago, they did update me that they did replace 2 of the refrigeration units. They actually sent me a copy of the receipt for their order, as a lot of their issues were coming from temperature maintenance work. So those should be hopefully addressed in the future. I have been doing just several pop-bys to make sure that they are still conforming with everything we went over in regards to COVID, as well as maintaining everything I helped them put in place during the time of their inspection. I know that we were physically moving tables and rearranging things to try to make them a little bit more social distanced and to help keep the public safe. But obviously they've had a number of issues in the past. They do seem to be actively working on it. They seem to be sincere in that fact. I think part of it might have been just the management we were working with prior might have had some either communication issues or so on and so forth. So the ones I have currently have been sending me even updated temperature sheets each day to show me what they've been doing in the case of things that were either out of temperature or just questions that come out with throughout the day. So I've been working just closely with them to try to get them on track.
No, it's an ongoing process, getting everybody back up to speed. You get new employees that have no clue. They gotta make sure that they get the proper training from the serve safe guy. And then sometimes the serve safe guy can't be on the whole time that the restaurant is open. So you're relying on somebody who's not as experienced, and things happen.
Thank you very much.
Chair, yes, I know, Bruce, when I was sitting in Mr. Connor's chair a few months ago, I was very adamant about the Board of Health being a resource as opposed to just an enforcement agent or an enforcement agent. And we talk about counseling and giving advice and working with. Those are the terms that I love to hear, because
Yeah, we wear multiple hats. It's not as simple as everybody thinks it is.
this whole COVID debacle, restaurants are trying to figure out how to work with it, and I know that early on it was kind of like enforcement, and you guys kind of swayed to let's figure out how to make this work. So I appreciate that, and thank you to the Board of Health for that.
The same restaurant had the possibility of use, not a specific, had the possibility of alcohol violations. I spoke to Officer Goslin, who has filed a formal report that Dennis has and Chief Daigle has. Officer Goslin is our alcohol compliance officer. He did not catch the restaurant in a specific violation, but was able to present to the restaurant multiple Instagram posts from underage individuals saying that this is the place to go if you want to get alcohol while you eat. And it's Officer Goslin's recommendation that we go about another sting in town that we've done, I think 3 in my time on the board in the last 12 years. That has to be worked out, but we also have to put the restaurants on notice that we're doing a formal sting with the ABCC. So I think that in our August meeting, we'll have an update of what is planned, and then something will be coordinated. The restaurant has been spoken to. Again, that's the consultative approach. I don't think they were aware of how to handle the situation.
Yeah, when I both met with them as well as Lenny, they did turn out and buy a card reader so that they can read the mask license or mask.
Yeah, that works at the bar, but not when a waitress is going out to the table checking IDs.
That's the hard part.
Right.
As soon as
So
the
in
waitress
town, we
turns their
require
back,
our
If I may chime in as well, I know that they did start posting some signs in regards to, they had stated that a majority of their issues were coming from people that were of age purchasing drinks and then transferring them over to minors. So they are posting a number of signs just saying that they are noticing that and that the authorities will be notified if they do find that. They also have told me at one of my last meetings that they were going to assign a staff member to each dining room location just to keep an eye on things and make sure that drinks aren't being shifted around, and if they are, just to card that person and take the drink at that point, and so on and so forth. So they are actively working on several things.
It's a matter of fake IDs and nothing we haven't seen before, but I think that it's summer's a great time to do such an operation. All right, does anyone else have anything additional for new business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the regular business and to have Hillary do the executive session.
Sure, make the motion.
So moved.
And Hillary, pull the board. Cindy got it.
All right, first by Cindy, I'll second by Mr. Spencer. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, none. Hillary, can you poll the board?
Yes, pull the board to go into executive session. Mrs. Grant? Yes. Mr. Spencer?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
And that is to discuss negotiations with Gracewood Development, and no further comments will be coming from the board.
Question for Jim. Jim, can you see me?
Yep.
Do I have to log off this and log back on?
Yes. To
Okay.
the link that you received this morning.
Okay, hopefully I can find that. All righty.
All right, I'll send it to you right now again.
I appreciate
right, thank you.
everyone's input on each
Jim?
side and on,
Nothing for me, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
thanks, Beth.
see you tomorrow.
Take care.